Hello and welcome. You're about to embark on a journey that is all about improving your English pronunciation and speaking clearly. If you've ever felt frustrated when people struggled to understand you, or if you found yourself hesitating to speak English because you weren't confident in your accent, this story is for you. Pronunciation is often one of the most challenging aspects of learning a language, yet it is also one of the most rewarding. Clear pronunciation not only makes communication easier but also boosts confidence and helps you connect with people more naturally. In this story, you will follow Emma, a dedicated English learner who had mastered grammar and vocabulary but struggled to speak clearly. People often asked her to repeat herself, and even simple conversations felt tiring. Emma's journey is a realistic reflection of what many learners experience: frustration, small victories, and gradual improvement through consistent practice. We will explore 10 stages of Emma's journey. You'll see her start with simple exercises at home, gradually moving to more complex techniques, real conversations, listening and mimicking native speakers, tackling challenging sounds, and finally speaking confidently in real-life situations. Each stage is filled with practical strategies, small wins, and lessons that anyone can apply to improve their own pronunciation. Through Emma's story, you'll discover the importance of listening carefully, practicing actively, recording yourself, and focusing on rhythm, stress, and intonation. You'll learn how imitation, repetition, and mindful practice can transform unclear speech into fluent, understandable English. This story is more than a guide. It's an inspiring journey that shows that with patience, consistency, and smart strategies, anyone can improve pronunciation. Along the way, you'll see how confidence grows, mistakes become learning opportunities, and speaking English becomes enjoyable rather than intimidating. So, prepare to follow Emma as she takes her first steps towards speaking English clearly and confidently, learning techniques, making mistakes, and celebrating her progress. In the next part, we will see Emma start her first practical exercises at home, laying the foundation for clearer pronunciation and more confident speech. Emma knew that improving pronunciation would take patience and consistent practice, so she started with simple exercises at home. She began by listening carefully to English sounds, focusing on vowels and consonants that were particularly challenging for her. Some sounds like the th in think or the difference between ship and sheep were tricky, and she realized that her first step was awareness. She couldn't fix what she didn't notice, so she spent several days just listening and identifying sounds she struggled with, replaying short audio clips repeatedly. Next, Emma started practicing minimal pairs, sets of words that differ by just one sound. She would say pairs like bat and bet, cot and caught, cat and cut, exaggerating the differences. At first, her tongue and lips felt awkward, and her voice sounded unnatural, but she reminded herself that muscle memory takes time. By repeating these exercises daily, her pronunciation gradually became clearer. She also began recording herself, a practice that felt strange at first. Listening to her own voice, she noticed mistakes she hadn't realized when speaking naturally. Sometimes she mispronounced endings of words, sometimes she stressed the wrong syllables. Instead of feeling discouraged, she took notes and practiced corrections systematically. Over time, she started hearing improvements, and small victories motivated her to keep going. Emma discovered the importance of intonation, stress, and rhythm in English. She realized that pronunciation isn't just about individual sounds, it's about how words flow together. She practiced reading short paragraphs aloud, emphasizing stress patterns in sentences, and paying attention to rising and falling intonation. For example, questions naturally rose at the end, while statements fell. This exercise helped her sound more natural, even when she wasn't perfectly pronouncing every single word. Shadowing became her next technique. Emma would play a short dialogue or a sentence from a native speaker and repeat it simultaneously, trying to mimic the rhythm, tone, and stress exactly. At first, she stumbled, lagged behind, or mispronounced words, but with daily repetition, her speech became smoother and more confident. Shadowing also helped her internalize the natural speed of English, reducing the tendency to speak too slowly or unnaturally. Emma also experimented with tongue twisters, finding them both challenging and fun. repeating phrases like, "She sells seashells by the seashore," or, "The 33 thieves thought that they thrilled the throne throughout Thursday," improved her articulation and helped train her mouth to produce sounds clearly. She started to notice that practicing these tongue twisters made her everyday speech more precise, even outside exercises. By the end of the first month, Emma's voice felt more confident, her sounds clearer, and her awareness of pronunciation had grown tremendously. She reflected in her journal, "I'm noticing subtle differences I never caught before. Pronunciation is like training my mouth and brain at the same time. It's challenging, but I can already hear small improvements." The next stage of her journey would push Emma further, listening and mimicking real-life English, where she would practice imitating native speakers in dialogues, TV shows, and podcasts to make her speech even more natural and fluent. After building a foundation with home exercises, Emma decided it was time to listen to and mimic real-life English. She understood that no matter how perfect her isolated sounds were, real communication required natural speech patterns, connected words, and authentic rhythm. She started with short video clips of everyday conversations and dialogues. At first, it was overwhelming. People spoke quickly, slurred words together, and used contractions like gonna, wanna, and could've. Emma realized that the pronunciation she had practiced alone sounded different in natural speech, and she needed to adapt. Her first technique was repetition and imitation. She would watch a short clip, pause it, and repeat the sentences exactly as she heard them, focusing on intonation, stress, and rhythm. She noticed that some words were pronounced differently than in dictionaries and learned to accept these natural variations. By mimicking not just the words but also the tone and pace, her speech began to feel more fluid. Emma also practiced slow-motion listening. She slowed down clips slightly to catch each word and sound more clearly. This helped her identify subtle nuances, like soft consonants or reduced vowels, which were crucial for sounding natural. After repeated practice, she returned to normal speed, noticing that her ears and mouth had adapted, and she could keep up with faster speech. To enhance her skills further, she recorded herself shadowing native speakers. Playing a sentence and speaking simultaneously, she focused on matching stress patterns and intonation, even when the words were challenging. At first, she stumbled frequently, mispronounced words, and lost rhythm. But with patience, repetition, and careful listening, she improved steadily. She discovered that listening and speaking together reinforced each other, making both comprehension and pronunciation stronger. Emma also started paying attention to connected speech, noticing how words blended together naturally. Phrases like, "I'm going to," became, "I'm gonna," and, "What do you want to do?" sounded like, "What you wanna do?" Recognizing these patterns, she practiced them until her mouth could produce them naturally, which made her speech faster and more authentic. Another breakthrough came with mimicking accents and tones. Emma realized that pronunciation isn't just about individual sounds but also about expressive delivery. By copying the emotions, emphasis, and rhythm of native speakers, she learned to sound more natural and engaging, not robotic. She even found it fun to imitate different speakers, experimenting with speed, pitch, and stress patterns to match what she heard. Emma also made a habit of reading aloud while listening. She would follow along with subtitles or transcripts, repeating sentences aloud while trying to match native pronunciation. This dual practice of reading and listening simultaneously helped her integrate what she had learned at home into realistic, flowing speech. By the end of this stage, Emma noticed significant improvements. Conversations she overheard in English sounded more familiar, she could reproduce sounds accurately, and her voice started to reflect natural speech patterns. She wrote in her journal, "Listening to real English and mimicking it is harder than I thought, but my speech feels more alive and natural. I can hear my progress, and it motivates me to keep going." The next stage of Emma's journey would take her beyond imitation to focused practice of individual challenging sounds and accent refinement, targeting the precise pronunciation issues that still slowed her down in conversation. Emma had made great progress mimicking natural speech, but she realized that some individual sounds still caused problems. Certain consonants and vowels didn't feel natural, and mispronouncing them sometimes made her hard to understand. She decided it was time to focus on targeted sound practice, addressing the tricky areas in her own accent. She started by identifying the sounds that gave her the most trouble. For Emma, the th sounds in think and this, the r, in words like car and really, and the subtle difference between short and long vowels like ship versus sheep were the most challenging. She made a list of these problem areas and committed to daily focused practice. Emma practiced isolated sounds first, exaggerating them to understand the mouth and tongue positions required. She used mirrors to watch her mouth, ensuring her tongue placement, lips, and jaw movements were correct. For the th sound, she noticed that her tongue often didn't stick out enough, so she practiced repeatedly, think, thin, this, that, these. Over time, the sound became more natural. Next, she practiced words containing these sounds, slowly at first, then gradually increasing speed. She recorded herself, listened back, and compared her pronunciation to native speakers. Hearing the difference allowed her to correct small mistakes she had previously missed. This process was repetitive, sometimes frustrating, but essential for muscle memory and accuracy. Emma also focused on vowel length and clarity, which are critical in English. She practiced pairs like ship versus sheep, bit versus beat, and full versus fool, noticing how slight changes in vowel length could completely change meaning. She read lists of minimal pairs aloud, then incorporated them into sentences, gradually integrating correct pronunciation into more natural speech. Consonant clusters were another area she worked on. Words like strengths, crisps, and twelfths were difficult to articulate smoothly. Emma practiced slowly, breaking the words into smaller parts, then gradually blending them together. This exercise strengthened her tongue and mouth muscles and improved clarity in rapid speech. She didn't stop at individual sounds. Emma also focused on stress patterns and syllable emphasis, realizing that even perfectly pronounced words could sound unnatural if stressed incorrectly. She practiced multisyllabic words like unbelievable, international, and responsibility, emphasizing the correct syllables, which made her speech more intelligible and natural. Another tool Emma used was shadowing with a focus on specific sounds. She would play a short sentence containing her target sounds, listen carefully, and repeat it, exaggerating the sounds initially and then matching native rhythm and intonation. This combination of listening, repetition, and imitation accelerated her progress. By the end of this stage, Emma felt much more confident in her pronunciation of previously problematic sounds. Conversations that once caused hesitation now flowed more smoothly, and she noticed that listeners could understand her more easily. She wrote in her journal, "Focusing on difficult sounds is hard work, but I can already hear the difference. My words are clearer, and speaking feels easier." The next stage of her journey would expand beyond individual sounds to speaking naturally in connected speech, mastering rhythm, linking words, and intonation to speak English clearly and fluently in real-life conversations. With her individual sounds improving, Emma realized that connected speech, how words flow together in natural English, was the next challenge. She had practiced vowels, consonants, and stress patterns in isolation, but real conversations required linking words, reducing unstressed syllables, and maintaining natural rhythm. She began by listening carefully to native speakers in short dialogues, focusing on how words blended together. She noticed that phrases like, "What are you going to do?" often sounded like, "What you gonna do?" or, "I don't know," became, "I dunno." At first, Emma tried to speak these phrases exactly as she had learned them in textbooks, but they sounded stiff and unnatural. She realized that to sound clear and fluent, she needed to practice the musicality and flow of English, not just individual words. Emma started practicing linking and reductions. She read sentences aloud, connecting words naturally. "I want to go," became, "I want to go, could you help me?" became, "Could you help me?" She noticed that these small changes didn't reduce clarity if done correctly. They made her sound more fluent and understandable to native speakers. Rhythm and intonation were also crucial. English has a natural stress-timed rhythm, with certain words emphasized and others reduced. Emma practiced clapping or tapping to the rhythm of sentences while reading aloud. This technique helped her internalize patterns of emphasis and pause, which made her speech sound smooth and confident. She continued shadowing native speakers, this time focusing on longer sentences and conversations. She imitated not only pronunciation but also pitch, stress, and pauses. At first, she stumbled over multisyllabic words and linking phrases, but repetition helped her develop a natural cadence. Shadowing allowed Emma to practice pronunciation in context, bridging the gap between isolated sounds and fluent speech. Emma also began recording short monologues and dialogues, then listening critically. She compared her speech to native speakers, noting differences in rhythm, stress, and linking. By identifying areas for improvement and repeating them, she gradually became more fluent and natural. To further enhance clarity, she practiced speaking slowly and deliberately, exaggerating difficult words and phrases. Once her mouth and tongue became accustomed to correct articulation, she gradually increased her speed while maintaining clarity. This method helped her avoid slurring words or losing precision when speaking quickly. Emma incorporated real-life practice by talking to language partners and friends. She noticed that connected speech made conversations easier to follow and more enjoyable. Listeners responded positively, which boosted her confidence even further. She began to feel that English wasn't just a set of rules and sounds, it was a living, flowing language she could navigate with ease. By the end of this stage, Emma could pronounce phrases smoothly, link words naturally, and maintain clear speech even at a faster pace. Her journal reflected her excitement. Connected speech was intimidating at first, but now my sentences flow more naturally. I sound more confident, and people understand me better. The next stage of Emma's journey would focus on practicing pronunciation in spontaneous conversation, where she would apply everything she had learned in real time, unpredictable interactions. After mastering connected speech, Emma's next challenge was using her improved pronunciation in spontaneous, real-life conversations. She realized that knowing the correct sounds and rhythm in practice exercises was one thing, but responding naturally in conversation was another. Real speech happens quickly, and her mind had to coordinate listening, thinking, and speaking all at once. Emma started small by having short conversations with friends in English. She focused on speaking clearly without overthinking, applying everything she had practiced: correct sounds, word linking, stress, and intonation. At first, she felt self-conscious, sometimes hesitating or correcting herself mid-sentence. But she reminded herself that making mistakes was part of the learning process. To improve, Emma recorded these conversations and listened back. She identified words or phrases that sounded unclear and repeated them aloud. She also paid attention to how naturally she linked words and used contractions, noticing subtle errors she could fix in future conversations. Recording herself helped her become aware of habitual pronunciation patterns that needed adjustment. She also practiced role-playing real-life situations, like ordering food, giving directions, or talking about hobbies. By simulating these scenarios repeatedly, she built confidence and muscle memory. When she encountered similar situations in real life, her pronunciation felt automatic, reducing hesitation and increasing clarity. Emma discovered the importance of slow, deliberate speech under pressure. In fast conversations, it was tempting to rush, which sometimes led to unclear articulation. She learned to pause slightly, pronounce tricky sounds carefully, and maintain rhythm, even in spontaneous speech. This made her speech understandable while still sounding natural. Another key strategy was listening carefully to conversation partners. By focusing on the sounds and rhythm of others' speech, she could adjust her own pronunciation to match, making interactions smoother and more comprehensible. She realized that pronunciation improvement isn't just about speaking, it's about active listening and adapting in real time. Emma also practiced asking for feedback. Friends and language partners gently corrected mispronounced words, and she repeated them aloud until they felt comfortable. She learned that feedback, even when subtle, accelerates progress and builds awareness of difficult sounds or patterns. Over time, Emma noticed that her confidence grew alongside her clarity. She no longer worried excessively about mistakes, and conversations flowed more naturally. She could participate in discussions, express opinions, and tell stories, all while maintaining clear pronunciation. By the end of this stage, Emma had successfully integrated her pronunciation skills into real-life speech. Her journal reflected her progress. Speaking in real conversations is no longer intimidating. I can use everything I've learned naturally, and people understand me. I feel more confident and ready to speak in any situation. The next stage of her journey would expand Emma's practice to public speaking and presentations, testing her clarity and pronunciation in front of larger audiences, which would further boost her confidence and precision. With confidence in one-on-one conversations, Emma decided to tackle public speaking in group discussions, where pronunciation and clarity were even more crucial. She realized that speaking in front of multiple people required projection, clear articulation, and controlled pacing. Nervousness often caused speakers to rush or mumble, so Emma knew she had to prepare carefully. She began by practicing reading aloud to an imaginary audience. Long paragraphs, short stories, or even news articles became her material. She focused on pronouncing every word clearly, maintaining rhythm, and emphasizing natural stress patterns. She experimented with volume, pitch, and intonation, noticing how small changes could make her speech sound more engaging and comprehensible. Emma also recorded her practice sessions, then listened critically. She marked words or phrases that were unclear, mispronounced, or sounded awkward, and repeated them until they flowed naturally. Over time, she noticed that her clarity improved, even when she spoke for several minutes without stopping. To build confidence in group settings, Emma joined a local English conversation club. Speaking in front of several people for the first time was intimidating, but she reminded herself to focus on clarity, not perfection. She applied everything she had learned: correct sounds, connected speech, stress, intonation, and pauses. She noticed that speaking slower and articulating carefully made her much more understandable, even if her words weren't perfectly fluent. Emma also practiced pronunciation under pressure. In impromptu discussions, people often asked unexpected questions. She learned to take a brief moment to form her response, focusing on pronouncing each word clearly rather than rushing to answer. This strategy reduced errors and made her speech more deliberate and confident. She used tongue twisters and tricky phrases as warm-ups before speaking in front of groups. Phrases like, "The 33 thieves thought that they thrilled the throne throughout Thursday," helped loosen her mouth muscles and improved articulation. These exercises also helped her reduce tension, making her speech more relaxed and natural. Shadowing became part of her preparation for presentations. She watched TED Talks or interviews, repeating sentences aloud, imitating rhythm, intonation, and emphasis. By doing so, she internalized natural speech patterns and developed a stronger, clearer voice for public speaking. Over several weeks, Emma noticed that her audience could understand her effortlessly. Her pronunciation was clear, her sentences flowed smoothly, and her confidence grew with each presentation. She began to enjoy the act of speaking publicly, rather than fearing it. Her journal reflected this transformation. Speaking in front of groups used to terrify me. Now I can focus on clarity and rhythm, and I feel confident expressing my ideas. Pronunciation is no longer a barrier, it's a tool to communicate effectively. The next stage of Emma's journey would focus on fine-tuning her accent and mastering natural intonation, making her speech not just understandable but also pleasing and natural to native ears. Having gained confidence in public speaking, Emma realized that accent refinement and natural intonation were the next steps in her journey. She had become understandable, but she wanted her English to sound smoother and more natural to native ears, without losing her identity. She knew that mastering subtle elements like pitch, stress, rhythm, and melody could make her speech more engaging and easier to follow. Emma began by listening closely to native speakers, focusing not only on individual sounds but also on how sentences rose and fell. She noticed that native English has a musical quality, with pitch variations signaling emphasis, emotion, and meaning. Statements typically fell at the end, questions often rose, and important words were emphasized while minor words were de-emphasized. She started practicing these patterns by repeating sentences from podcasts, interviews, and TED Talks, trying to mimic the melody and stress naturally. To refine her accent, Emma focused on subtle pronunciation adjustments. For instance, she worked on softening or reducing certain sounds, like the T in water pronounced more like a soft flap in American English, or the schwa sound in unstressed syllables. She also learned to distinguish between long and short vowels more consistently, which made her speech clearer and more native-like. Emma incorporated intonation exercises into daily reading aloud. She read dialogues, stories, and news articles, deliberately adjusting pitch and stress to match natural speech patterns. She recorded herself and compared it to native speakers, noticing small differences and making corrections. Over time, these adjustments became automatic, and her speech sounded more fluid and expressive. She also practiced shadowing longer speeches and conversations, focusing on rhythm and linking words naturally. This technique helped her internalize not just individual sounds, but the musical flow of English. Emma noticed that her speech began to sound less like isolated words and more like a connected, coherent stream of language, which made her easier and more enjoyable to listen to. Emma's friends began to notice her progress as well. During casual conversations, they commented that she spoke more smoothly and naturally, and they had no trouble understanding her even when she used faster, more expressive speech. This positive feedback boosted her confidence and motivated her to keep refining her skills. She also experimented with emphasizing emotion through intonation, noticing how varying pitch could make her statements sound more friendly, persuasive, or enthusiastic. For example, a simple sentence like, "I love this idea," could convey excitement or sarcasm depending on how she stressed the words. This mastery of expressive pronunciation allowed her to communicate more effectively and connect with listeners on an emotional level. By the end of this stage, Emma felt that her accent was refined, her intonation natural, and her speech pleasing to listen to. She could adapt her pronunciation depending on context, audience, and style, which gave her both clarity and sophistication. Her journal entry captured her pride and excitement. "My pronunciation is no longer just about being understood, it's about expressing myself clearly and naturally. I can speak with confidence, rhythm, and melody, and it feels like English is becoming my second voice." The next stage of Emma's journey would focus on maintaining and reinforcing her skills in long-term practice, ensuring that her clarity, accent, and confidence remained consistent in every conversation. With refined pronunciation and natural intonation, Emma realized that the key to long-term success was consistent practice and real-world application. She understood that even small lapses in daily speaking or listening could slowly undo progress, so she set out to create routines and habits that would maintain and strengthen her pronunciation skills over time. Emma began by dedicating time each day to active listening, choosing a variety of English content, podcasts, news, interviews, and even casual YouTube vlogs. She focused on noticing rhythm, stress, linking, and subtle vowel and consonant sounds. By constantly exposing herself to natural English, her ears remained sharp, and her brain stayed tuned to proper pronunciation patterns. She also continued recording and reviewing her own speech, but now with a focus on longer speaking tasks. She delivered short presentations, told stories, or summarized articles aloud, then compared her recordings to native speakers. This helped her identify small inconsistencies in pronunciation, intonation, or rhythm that might otherwise go unnoticed. By addressing them immediately, she ensured her speech remained clear and natural. Emma incorporated real-life speaking practice whenever possible. She engaged in conversations with native speakers, participated in group discussions, and even joined online language exchanges. She focused on clarity and listener comprehension, consciously applying everything she had learned, from individual sounds and minimal pairs to connected speech and expressive intonation. These interactions reinforced her skills in a practical, dynamic environment. She also created a set of pronunciation challenges for herself, tackling tricky words, tongue twisters, and fast speech passages. These exercises kept her mouth and tongue agile and strengthened her ability to articulate clearly under pressure. Emma noticed that what used to feel difficult or awkward now flowed naturally with practice. Another important habit was self-monitoring during casual speech. Even in everyday interactions, she paid subtle attention to her pronunciation, rhythm, and stress patterns. Over time, these habits became automatic, so that clear speech was no longer a conscious effort, it had become second nature. Emma also emphasized patience and self-compassion. She accepted that perfection was impossible, and occasional mistakes were normal. Instead of fearing errors, she used them as opportunities to notice patterns and refine her pronunciation further. This mindset prevented frustration and kept her motivated for long-term growth. By consistently applying these strategies, Emma's pronunciation, clarity, and confidence reached a level where speaking English felt effortless. Listeners could understand her immediately, she could adjust her intonation and rhythm to suit different situations, and her voice carried both authority and friendliness. Her journal reflected this achievement. Consistency and real-world practice are the secrets to lasting improvement. Pronunciation is not a one-time goal, it's a lifelong skill that grows with use and attention. I feel confident, clear, and natural when I speak English now. The final stage of Emma's journey would be a reflection and consolidation of all she had learned, tying together her techniques, lessons, and mindset into a complete guide for anyone seeking to speak English clearly and confidently. After months of dedicated practice, Emma looked back on her journey and realized how far she had come. From the first hesitant attempts at individual sounds to speaking clearly and confidently in real-life conversations and public speaking, every step had been essential. She understood that improving pronunciation wasn't just about making sounds correctly. It was about building awareness, practicing consistently, and applying skills in meaningful contexts. Emma reflected on the lessons that had made the biggest difference. Consistent daily practice had been crucial, whether through listening, repetition, recording herself, or mimicking native speakers. Focusing on challenging sounds and minimal pairs strengthened her articulation, while attention to stress, rhythm, and intonation made her speech natural and engaging. She realized that connected speech and expressive intonation were just as important as individual sounds, as they helped her communicate clearly in fluent English. She had also learned that real-world practice is irreplaceable. Conversations with friends, language partners, group discussions, and presentations tested her skills in unpredictable situations and helped internalize everything she had practiced. Emma understood that mistakes were not failures. They were opportunities to notice patterns and refine her speech. Over time, these repeated, real-world applications built confidence, clarity, and natural flow. Emma's journal summarized her philosophy. Pronunciation is a lifelong skill. It grows when you listen carefully, speak deliberately, and apply what you learn every day. Clear English isn't just about sounds, it's about rhythm, intonation, and communication. Confidence comes when clarity becomes natural. By maintaining habits of listening, recording, shadowing, and practicing tricky sounds, Emma ensured her progress would last. She could now speak English fluently, clearly, and confidently, adapting to different accents, speeds, and contexts. Her voice carried not only words but intention, expression, and meaning, allowing her to connect with others effortlessly. Emma's journey shows that anyone can improve pronunciation with patience, dedication, and smart strategies. Whether it's small daily exercises, mimicking real-life English, or practicing in front of an audience, consistent effort transforms hesitant speech into clear, confident communication. The process takes time, but every step forward strengthens not only pronunciation but also self-assurance and enjoyment in speaking English. For anyone starting this journey, Emma's story offers a roadmap. Begin with awareness, practice deliberately, mimic natural speech, apply skills in real interactions, and refine continuously. Pronunciation improvement is not an endpoint but a continuous journey of learning, listening, and speaking with confidence. By following these principles, anyone can achieve the clarity, fluency, and confidence that make English truly expressive and empowering. Emma closed her journal with a final thought. Every word I speak is a step forward, Every conversation is practice. English is no longer intimidating, it's a language I can use clearly, confidently, and joyfully.